Welcome to the best or worst Bloodline tier list. Now, before we get started, I just want to say this is all my own opinion, so don't have a go. It's completely my own opinion. Your opinion is bound to be different from mine, but there's nothing wrong with that. So, without further ado, let's get into it. So, we're going to start with Akuma. Now, Akuma is a Sharingan, and Akuma evolves around stunning and dodging attacks. So, in PvP, it's very good. It's going to be really useful, but against regular NPCs it can be, but there are better things to be using. So I'm going to chuck this into good. Now, the Jokai Araki Jokai, so the Golden Byakugan. Araki Jokai is a stronger version of the regular Byakugan, and it involves around close ranged attacks, multi-hits and high damage, and it does drain chi as well. So it is a very good move, 100% in PvP and just regular PvE as well. So we'll put that in the very good, as it is such a nice bloodline to use. Now we'll move on. So this next one, when I can remember the name of it, Ashen Storm, that's the one. So Ashen Storm isn't one of my favorites. Ashen Storm is revolving around fast movements and area effect and stunning enemies. So if you like the fast movement, area effect and the stunning enemies, it is a good one to use. But for me personally, I'm going to put it into the good. Yeah, we'll leave it there. Right, now we'll move on to Senkai. Now this Senkai is one of a few variants. As you have Dio Senkai, regular Senkai, and Azumir Senkai, which is this one. So Azumir Senkai is based around AoE and stunning with countering on top. So if you like countering your opponents and you like AoE stun, that one is a good one to use. For me, Azumir Senkai, we'll put it in the good. It's not a meh, it's good. because it can be really useful. Moving on. Bunker Akuma. So one of the 7 variants of Akumas is another Sharingan, and Bunker Akuma revolves around damage, stuns and dodges, making it really ideal for PvP. So we can put this one in the good. It's not the best thing you could use, but it's still something. If you enjoy the PvP aspect of the game, then this would probably be the one to use. Moving on, Black Shock. So Black Shock is an elemental bloodline. So Black Shock revolves around area of effect and stunned enemies. So it's not good. I mean, you could probably get away with it using against NPCs. But if you'll probably have a bloodline better than Black Shock. So we'll put that into the meh, because it's not ideal at all. Next we're going to move on to Bolt. Now Bolt, again, another elemental bloodline, revolves around area of effect and stunning. So it's ideal for combo extending and crowd control. So Bolt again is a meh. The only time you'll ever really probably want to use Bolt is War, just to keep the crowd control to a minimum. Right, next one, Bubble. Now Bubble again is another elemental bloodline. Its moveset revolves around area of effect, slowing down then enemies. So for stunning enemies again, there are things that you could use better. There are definitely better bloodlines for stunning. Moving on. Clay. So Summer Clay is good. It is another elemental bloodline. But it's based off of Data. So it's dropping explosives, flying midair. Clay is really good for crowd control and war. So if you're a big fan of it, if you're a big fan of war, Clay will be your sort of one of your go-tos. So we'll chuck that into the good. Now onto one of the newer bloodlines, Cobra. So Cobra is a manipulation of snakes to poison and stun enemies. Now this can be good, but at the same time it can be meh. It's not something, I mean, if you like poison and stun enemies, then I would either use Cobra or its stronger variant, Kabu Cobra. But for this one, I would throw in good. Crystal's elemental bloodline. It can be good, just for a sheer fact of stuns, but the damage is meh. It's not something that I'd use, so I'd put it in terrible. It's a basic, yeah, it's a basic move. Not something that I would use personally. Right, moving on. So we are on Duggan. So Duggan is actually very useful for the Diva boss fight if you use Liquefy. Now Duggan is based around fast attacks, stunning, by trapping the enemies in water, so it makes it ideal for fast moves and quick damage. So if you like that sort of aspect, then this is the bloodline for you. It is a good bloodline. It's something that I've used quite a bit during the Diva boss fight, as it's nice to trap Diva, and then I can use a few other bloodlines to come in and do damage just while he's stunned. Moving on, we're on to, I believe this one was a Jokai. This is light Jokai. So, oh no, this isn't light Jokai, this is dark Jokai. So this isn't, it was a limited time bloodline. But if you have dark Jokai, dark Jokai is based around rotation domes and deal area of effect damage. So again, good for crowd control. So I've never used it personally, but dark Jokai, we can put it into the good. It's not quite very good, but it's good. Now on to the newest bloodline, Diva Rengoku. So Diva Rengoku is based off of Diva's Rengoku. So it's good for high attack damage, some stuns by trapping, I believe. So for this one, definitely got to for me. Not something that I've had the opportunity to try out myself, because the rarity is a 1 in 60 drop from the boss. But I do believe it is a very good bloodline. Now on to the next one, the second new bloodline that come out with Diva Rengoku is Diva Sengoku. So Diva Sengoku again is a limited time bloodline. It's just basically a more powerful version of Sengoku. So high damage, not so much trapping, but area effect and moves like that. Again, another bloodline that I've never used. Now, moving on, we're on to Dio Senko. So one of the Senko varieties, moves around teleportation and fast movements with stunts. So if you like teleporting to your enemies, this is the one for you. It can be good. It can be good. Emerald. So Emerald is just a stronger variant of Crystal. So it is one of the new another new bloodline that recently come out. But it's basically the same as Crystal, just a bit stronger. It's just damage, so it doesn't. Yeah, it's doo-doo. It's not something that I'd use. Now, explosion. So explosion, it's pretty self-explanatory. Explosion moveset revolves around the area effect damage through explosions, and all require no hands eyes. So explosion in PvP, amazing, mixed up with some others. But other than PvP, no, it's not. It's not helping you. Moving on. So we're up to Forged Kuma. So Forged Kuma, again, is one of the 7 variants of Akumas. Now Forged Kuma is Kakashi Obito Sharingan, so it revolves around stunning enemies and temporarily invincibility. So for PvP, it's good, not so much PvE, but I can safely say that this is a good bloodline to use. Definitely something that I'd recommend using. Moving on. Unity, or no, this isn't Frostfire, this is Frost, sorry. So this is just freezing enemies and range attack. So it's freeze, stun freezing enemies and range attacks for Frost. So Frost is more of a meh if you want to be moving on. So we're roughly about halfway ish through all the bloodlines. But we're up to Giovanni Shiza. So Giovanni Shiza is an area of effect damage and homing attacks with stun on top. So this is a very good bloodline. for war, PvP, and even just regular PvE. So definitely something to use. Golden Sand. So Golden Sand is a stronger variant of sand. The only difference actually being with gold sand is it has slow enemies and around area of effect. So golden sand, it's a meh. There are other things you could use that are better. Moving on. So this next one, not something that I've had the pleasure of using, but this next one is called Hair. So Hair's moveset revolves around elemental beam attacks that burn and then slow and stun. So Hair is something that you might want to use if you want the slow and stun onto the enemies. So in my book, that is very good. Moving on. So I can never pronounce this one correctly. It gets me every time. So this one is called Wanzami. So Wanzami evolves around shark shape water attacks, stunning and chi draining. So Wanzami is basically the Kizame bloodline. So it's going to be a meh, just because of the water shaped water attacks. That's not going to help. If there was a bit of damage onto that, it probably could go up to a good, but for me, Wanzami's a meh. Right, moving on. Ice. So ice again, another elemental. Ice has slow area effect, I believe. So it does make it no. That's completely wrong. So ice ice revolves around area of effect damage and stun enemies with the ice. So to a degree, yes, there is some sort of stun, but for me, ice is a meh. Not something you could find, or you could use something a lot better. Inferno. So Inferno is, again, another element, so it has no mode. Its moveset revolves around burning damage with black flames. So, for me, Inferno is terrible because there's nothing else to it. It's literally just damage with black flames. Moving on. Ink. So Ink is the Psi bloodline. So Ink revolves around long range attacks and stuns. So if you want to attack from a distance, Ink is probably a good one to use. But again, there's probably something better you could use. Moving on, sand. So we've had gold sand. So sand is just a weaker version to gold sand, which revolves around area of effect and stunning enemies. So sand for me personally is a meh. It's not something that really like throws out at you. And again, you could use something a lot better. Moving on. Eternal. So Eternal is the Hidan bloodline. So Eternal revolves around stunning multiple enemies and draining health, making it ideal for crowd control. So again, another great bloodline for war. Some PvE, not too much on the PvP though. So we can put Eternal into the meh. Right, next one. So I believe this is regular Jokai. So Jokai is Byakugan. So the Jokai moveset revolves around close ranged attacks, multi hits, high damage, and draining chi. So it's actually the weakest variant of the Jokais. But if you have Jokai, it's definitely something good to use. But if you do have the other variants, whether it be Arashiki, Jokai, light or dark, will probably be a lot better to use. Moving on to another recently released bloodline is Jotaro Shizen. So Jotaro Shizen is a variation of the Shizen. But Jotaro Shizen was a limited time bloodline. But this moveset revolves around area of effect damage and home and attacks with a stun. So it goes up here with its other variation. It's still very good to use. It's definitely something that I would use if I had it. Moving on, Kabu Cobra. So the stronger variation to the Cobra. Again, it revolves around snakes to poison and stun enemies. So it'd be in the same category. It's a good. It's not much better than what just regular Cobra is. Moving on to this one, Kotatsu. So Kotatsu is a constance of ranged of area effect and stunning attacks. So another ideal one for PvP, but everything else it's a bit meh. Moving on, Kaizen. So Kaizen is not it's not one of my favorites. I'll say that. It's definitely something that not many people would use, because the Kaizen moveset revolves around dealing burning and explosive damage through the use of ash. So useless. So we're going to put this into terrible. Moving on to Kadira. So Kadira revolves around enlarging the users to deal damage to a great area at the cost of expanding their hitbox and slowing them. So Kadira, it's a lose to gain. You're losing something to gain damage. So you're losing speed and you're making your hitbox a lot bigger, but you are increasing your damage to a great area. So this one for me is meh. Again, there's something that you could definitely use that's better. Moving on. So Kenichi. So Kenichi is the Rock Lee bloodline. So it revolves around fast and powerful martial arts, which doesn't use chi and hand signs, but instead uses stamina and is simultaneous. So it makes it ideal for PvP, but it can be good for PvE. So Kenichi is definitely got to, because you're not having to use hand signs or any sort of chi. It's all based on stamina. So for me personally, Kenichi is a god tier level. Moving on, Doki revolves around delaying damage and stunning and close ranged attacks. So for me personally, Doki's a good, just because of the delay damage, stunning, and then the close ranged attacks. That can be really helpful in some situations. Moving on to the next one, Concho, which is the insect bloodline. So Concho revolves around manipulating insects to poison, slow down, stun, and drain chi from enemies. So this one is good just because of the draining chi, the slow down, and the stun. Definitely something, if you have, I'd use it, but there might be something that better suits the way you play. Moving on, is lava. So lava, self-explanatory, it's basically lava style. Revolves around the area of effect and burn damage. So for me personally, lava isn't that good because it's only doing area of effect and burning damage. So it's not the greatest thing you could use. You could use either fire, bloodlines, or just a regular fire elemental, and you would probably do more damage than what you would do in lava. Moving on. This next one, Light Jokai. So one of the strongest variants of Jokai. Again, is a moveset revolves around rotation domes that deals area of effect damage. Combining, if you do have Light Jokai, definitely something that I'd recommend using, because it is very devastating in PvP and PvE. I have been a victim to Light Jokai. It is very powerful, which is why it ranks so high. Moving on, Mecha. Mecha isn't one of my favourites either. Again, it's more of a good. So Mecha is a long-ranged and area of attack, or area of effect attack, shall we say, that explodes and burns. So there are many other bloodlines better than Mecha that you could use for area of effect attacks, and long-ranged attacks as well. Moving on, Minakami, which is this bloodline here, is actually the puppet bloodline. So it's going to be revolving around medium ranged attacks through puppets. So for me, it's a meh. I mean, if you like using puppets, by all means, it might rank somewhere higher up for you. For me personally, and the way I play, it's not something that I'd ever use. Moving on, Mud. So Mud, again, another elemental. The only time I'd probably ever use Mud is if I didn't have something like Nature or any of the other good bloodlines. But Mud revolves around area of effect, so it's pretty useless. Not something that you want to use at all. The next one is Nature. So it is the lower form to Shizen and Raiken Shizen. But Nature revolves around long range attacks with wood. So it is a bit better. You can restrain. There are some that do trap enemies, so that can be very useful. Not as strong as its other variants, but still rather good. Moving on, Nectar. Not a bloodline that I've ever used before, but it's pretty self-explanatory. Nectar revolves around manipulating bees and honey to poison and stun. So for me, Nectar goes with the mirror as well. There are better things that you could use, like Gnocho or Kabu Cobra that you could use to poison enemies. And yeah, the next one is Odin Subaru. So Odin Subaru revolves around stunning with green lights, green lightning, due to its similarities, yet high damage. So Odin Subaru is a stronger version of just regular Subaru. So for me, Subaru again is a meh. It's not something that I'd use. There probably is. No, there's definitely something a lot better than Subaru or Odin Subaru. Next is Alchemy. So Alchemy revolves around the usage of dogs. So this is your Kiba bloodline. So you'll have the drilling attacks that it has. So again, same thing. Alchemy is a meh. Moving on. This next one, Paper, is basically Goners or Corner Bloodline. So Paper revolves around ranged attacks through the use of paper and origami. So it's the same as all the others that use a summoning for long ranged attacks through the use of something else. So again, it's meh, just because of the long range. Moving on. Atomic. So Atomic is one of the Kage's moves. So it revolves around damage and stunning enemies with ranged attacks. So Atomic is a very good one. Not something that I've used, but I have had it be used on me, and it does hurt. Not the nicest thing you want to get hit with. Moving on to Pika Senko. So Pika Senko is a stronger variant of Senko. It revolves around teleportation, light speed movements with moves and area of effect. So Pika Senko is definitely, if you do spin it, it's definitely something you'll want to keep for the teleportating, the really quick movement speeds, and the area of effect. Moving on. Vine is definitely a very good. So with Vine, it's a bloodline that's very good for trapping your enemies in. So yeah, so Vine revolves around stunning and temporary invincibility and some stealth movement. So if you do equip the mode, you can go underground for a stealth movement, which is really cool, and it's very good, very very good for PvE and PvP. Right, this next one, Ryan Akuma, another one of the 7 Akumas, is Sasuke's Sharingan. So its moveset revolves around dealing burn damage to enemies and countering them. So for me, it's a meh. It could be better, but there are stronger things that you could use. Moving on, Ryan Rengoku, so Sasuke's Rinnegan. Ryan Rengoku's moveset revolves around pulling, location swapping and illusion casting. So this is a very good move, one of my favourites, definitely. Nearly there. So this next one, Rengoku, is just base Rinnegan. Its moveset is incredibly versatile. So it revolves around area of effect, stunning and long range, which is good for war modes. So for me, Rengoku is very good. I enjoy using Rengoku. Moving on, Renshiki. So Renshiki again. This moveset revolves around absorbing attacks area. So again, that goes with Rengoku. And with Renshiki, it does do a lot of damage. Moving on, Riser Akuma. So Riser Akuma for me was the first really big bloodline I ever spun. Again, is one of the 7 Akumas. And its moveset revolves around stunning enemies and burning damage to enemies through black flames. So for me, Riser is very good. Not quite got tier, but it is very good. Moving on. So this next bloodline, nicknamed Redwood, is Raiken Shizen. So Hashirama, it's bloodline. So Raiken Shizen revolves around stunning and dealing damage multiple times to enemies through Redwood. So this one is a god tier for me. I enjoy using it for when I'm fighting bosses or anything like that. It is really helpful. Moving on, Subaru. So Subaru is the base form for Odin Subaru. Subaru revolves around low damaging but fast attacks and stun enemies, making it ideal for combo starting and extending. So for me, if you like the combos, go for it, but me personally, I'm not a combo type of dude, so it's not something that I enjoy using. Moving on. So this next one is right. So sand. So sand is a weaker version. To the other sand variants, which revolves around area of effect and stunning. So for me personally, sand isn't my go-to. So sand for me sits here. Moving on. Satori Akuma. Another one that does 7. So Satori Kuma is Shisui's Sharingan. So it's very good for image illusion, countering and stunning. So for me, Satori is very good. I do enjoy using Satori. Very good for an all-round bloodline. Moving on to Scorch. So Scorch is not one of my favorites. So Scorch is Scorch style and revolves around dealing burn damage and ranged attacks. So if you like it, go for it, but for me personally, Scorch isn't one of those bloodlines to use, because if you've got an Akuma or a Senkai, I'd push you to use that instead of Scorch. Moving on. So this next one, I never practiced this right. Shizen. So Saishin revolves around stunning enemies through the use of mind control and power fails. So for me personally, just because of the stunning enemies, it's a meh for me. Again, you could still probably use something a lot better. Moving on to the next bloodline, Sengoku. So Sengoku is the weaker version to Diva Sengoku. And Sengoku revolves around area of effect through meteor strikes and lightning explosions, with black flames and burning enemies. So I use this one a lot. If you watch my streams, you'll know I love using Sengoku. One of my favorites. So for me, that's got to move. Again, your opinion might be completely different from what mine is, but you're allowed to have your own opinion. I'm allowed to have mine. Moving on, Senko. So Senko is the basic variant of Azumir, Dio, and Pika. So revolves around teleportation, fast movements, and stun. So it's a good. You would still probably want the variants a bit more, just because they are a bit stronger. but other than that, Senko is good. Moving on, Shadow. So Shadow is an immobilizing move with the use of shadows, making it ideal for PvP and some crowd controls, depending. So for me, Shadow's a meh for me. Again, there are some things better that you could use, like Vine to stun. Moving on, Shindo Akuma. So Shindo Akuma, again another one of the 7 Akumas, is Madara's Sharingan. So Shindo Akuma revolves around clone creation and large damage effect. So I enjoy using Shindo Akuma. So for me it's very good. Because I've got my clones on top of my Flower of Destruction, and it deals a lot of damage. Moving on, we got a few more left to do. So Shizen, so base. It is stronger than nature by damage comparison, but it is a lower version of Raiken Shizen, Giovanni Shizen, and Jotaro Shizen. But it revolves around stunning, dealing damage multiple times to enemies. So for this, it's a good, but if you have the other variants of it, they'd be better to use. Next one is sound. So sound revolves around area of effect, hit multiple enemies multiple times, so making it ideal for heavy damage and crowd control. So for me, it's a meh, because it's only going to do you crowd control. Moving on to Steam. So Steam, again another Bloodline element, revolves around area of effect and slow burning. So for me, it's terrible. There are other things that you could use it better. Storm. Now I do believe Storm is, it is purple lightning. So Storm revolves around stunning and zoning with thunderclouds. So for me, Storm's meh. It's a meh from me. The last two. So Tengoku, one of the Goku variants. Tengoku revolves around high damage, multi-hits and incredible knockbacks, so it makes it ideal for PvP and War. So Tengoku, again with the Rengoku and Renshiki, it is very good. Now for the final bloodline. This final one is Frostfire. So Frostfire, not something I've used, and I've actually never seen it in action. It's not Frostfire. Glacier. So, Glacier's movements revolve around stunning enemies with ice due to its similarities yet higher damage compared to ice. So, for me, it's a meh. For me, I would still use things like Vine if I wanted to trap and stuff. So, just before I have a full conclusion, I'm going to do a little slop around, make sure I think that this is the correct thing. And there we go. So this is my blood tier list ranking from god tier to terrible. If you like the video, please like and smash that sub button, turn on the notification bell, and I'll see you all in the next one. Peace.